Hello to all my BC WrestlePod nerds out there, and welcome to another rendition. Well, I mean, this is the first debut edition, at least this year, anyways, of Flannel Fighters, your Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling review show here. We had a bit of a technical difficulties, which is why some of the things may not look correct, but that is okay. So, this is the debut of the 2025 edition of Flannel Fighters, your Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling review show here at the BC WrestlePod Parts. And I will be rocking this one by myself today. My co-host Will unfortunately could not make it due to some personal reason, but he wanted me to let all of you know that he really enjoyed the show and he wished he could be here, but I told him I would be able to rock this one on my own. So we're going to be good. Yes, thank you, Will. I appreciate you. So, we're going to keep this brief and short this evening. So, before we get into the Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling Resurrection event, to kind of get stuff out of the way, if you are new to BC WrestlePod, thank you for being here. We love and appreciate you and your time, whether it was through a friend, the algorithm, or you just felt like, why not? You can do this. And let's check out these nerds and talking about wrestling. We thank you. If you like what you see here with our live stream reviews and the edited videos that go up the following day, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube page. Follow us on Twitch. We have officially made Twitch affiliate. Thank the Lord. We've been working for 3 years, so we got these bills out here to pay. So let's do it, y'all. But if you cannot commit to a full length of review, which we understand because time is important for everybody, we suggest that you follow us on the social medias because you can read our report cards and watch our clips that summarize the major talking points for all of our shows. We also have some merchandise for available, link in the description, and all our social media platforms, wherever you follow us or whatever tickles you fancy. We got a lot of stuff. We have a Pride collection. We have a collection that is going to be donating money to the organizations helping out in these crazy times. But y'all can check that out in our link tree. But with that out of the way, let's just jump straight into it. So this is the third Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling event in 2025, but this is the first time where we finally got the time to do a review. We had Northern Rising back in March. We had Northern Rising back in May. We had Mayhem back in March. And now we have Resurrection with two more Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling shows happening, one at the end of this month and then one in September, which I will get into that towards the end of the show. But we are going to be reviewing Resurrection, which is taking place in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. So let's just jump straight into the action. We kick things off Resurrection with, well, what starts out as a singles match. We get, member of the Dark Order that we know and love, Stu Grayson, taking on the Sidewalk Savant and Sheldon Jean. So, Stu Grayson, for those of you who have watched AEW or Mystery Wrestling, y'all are familiar with Stu Grayson, member of the Dark Order, very, very good Canadian wrestler. And Sheldon Jean, who was once a part of TNA with Kenny King, is now he's taken it here in Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling. Sheldon Jean is great. I still hold his match with Kaito Kiyomiya a couple of events ago in high regard. But this is a match that we were getting. This was your standard opening bouts. Sheldon Jean has been improving so much with his wrestling game. Stu Grayson, of course, a veteran of the sport. However, Sheldon Jean is running around with a new companion as part of this new team that he has with QT Marshall, who was not here for this event. But, of course, it becomes a 2-on-1 situation. We get Stu Grayson wins by a DQ. The beating up continues. But then Stu Grayson ends up being saved by his Dark Order brother and Evil Uno. So that wasn't the only surprise we got, though, because we get Santino Marella coming out to try to make this a tag team match. But then he is told by the referee that he doesn't have the power to do so because this is not his company. So he doesn't have any authoritative power, if you will. But then, as this was being said, Scott D'Amore, and Scott, for one night only, gives Santino the authoritative power to be our authority figure for Resurrection, which we love. And so, by that power, Santino makes this a tag team match where we get, Evil Uno and Stu Grayson taking on Sheldon Jean and Friend. So this ends up really fun tag team bout between the commentary made it a fact to mention that Stu and Evil Uno's tag team was the Super Smash Bros, which is an ode to the video game franchise. This was a fun tag team back and forth. This whole entire segment from the singles match to Santino one night only becoming director of authority to this tag team match. It was fantastic. Stu Grayson and Evil Uno end up winning. They reunite, which makes me oh so happy to see. And this was a really fun way to start out the night because this was a good moment. The crowd was into it, and I loved it. From here, we get into our second match of the evening, which is for the PWA Championship Grail. So this is a championship where our champion Rohan Raja would be taking on Alex Hammerstone, aka now just going by Hammerstone. I love Hammerstone, very familiar with his work both in MLW and his stint in TNA. So this was a championship match. This was a fun bout. I was wondering how Rohan was going to beat Hammerstone. And of course, because Rohan is a heel champion at this point, he ended up playing his tricks to kind of get the win for this one here, being a heel. Hammerstone is always fun to watch. He's a big slab of meat, but he, at least recently, he has been doing really well to mix that power-based wrestling with the athleticism that he tends to have, which is a lot of fun. It's just really fun to watch. Now, was I expecting Hammerstone to win? No. Rohan Raju, again, being the heel, he had his valet, the low blow on Hammerstone, which would allow Rohan to retain the PWA Champions Grail and ultimately walk out as the victor. I will say I did feel this was on the shorter end of things. And looking back at the whole entire show, especially with our three quote unquote main event matches, I was very surprised of how quick the show went. But with that little nitpick, though, I still really like this match. It was a pretty solid match between both of these men. And once again, your PWA Champions Grail is Rohan Raja. We're going later in the show, however, as he's giving an interview, Billy Gunn, of all people, says that if he wasn't reffing tonight, he would challenge for that. So maybe setting up something down the line, or whether it be, the side like the Sidewalk Showdown or Sacred Ground, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So again, my final thoughts. Solid match between both of this. This was pretty decent. So next up, we have a match that has been kind of in the making for quite some time. This is for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. This is the challenger and always ready Matt Cardona taking on our challenger and Tom Latimer. So what I love about this story going into this match is that Matt Cardona at one point held the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, but he had to vacate it due to injury, and he was never truly pinned to lose said title. So he wants to take back the title that he never truly lost from Tom Latimer, who has held this thing for quite some time at this point. And I have to say, this was a really good back and forth. This match ended up being in my top 3 of the entire night. Matt Cardona is always fun to watch. His reinvention since leaving and getting released from WWE all those years ago, running on the independents, becoming the king of the independents, so to speak. And Tom Latimer is a really fun to watch. I think he is very, very good in the ring. I think he's a solid worker. I love his accent. I mean, hey, but this is a really great back and forth match. It was very solid all the way through. And I really, really dug. This was a lot of fun. And Matt Cardona, as much as he tried, he could not out wrestle Tom Latimer. And Tom Latimer does end up pinning Matt Cardona for the win here. And he walks out still your NWA World Heavyweight Champion. Matt, we're going to talk about you a little bit later in the show because you still were around for something that goes down, which is building towards something that is happening this weekend. Well, actually, it's happening tomorrow for GCW. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But we move on from our NW World Heavyweight Championship match to probably my favorite match of the entire night. This was the 6-man scramble match. So this is just a chaotic 6-person bout. There could only be one winner, so everyone's going to be vying for that pin. And in this 6-man scramble, representing in this match includes the Octopus, Jonathan Gresham, Psycho Mike, United Empire, member of New Japan and one half of the New Japan Strong Tag Team Champions and TJP, Canada's own Michael Allen, his name, Michael Allen Richard Clark. We have Boopin, and of course, one of our personal favorites here, BC WrestlePod, and one of my personal Speedball, Mike Bailey. This match had everything that I wanted. We had good submissions, we had funny spots, we had bodies flying around everywhere. This match was everything that I wanted it to be, and then some. Everybody looked really good in this match, and I loved this match so much. We got all the fun spots, but ultimately, Speedball Mike Bailey hits the ultimate weapon to try to go for the win, but Michael Allen Richard Clark pulls Speedball out of the ring and steals the pin and is your winner of the 6-man scramble. Again, this was my favorite match of the entire show. This was high paced cruiserweight action, if you want to call it that. But everyone played their part. Everyone was so good. The crowd was a good addition to hyping up this match. And this was a phenomenal 6-man scramble. I really enjoyed this one. This was a lot of fun to watch. So from here, we get into our, I guess we call it a civil war, because this has been going on for the last 2 months, 3 months, if you want to call it that. But we are having this weird Bullet Club versus Bullet Club War Dog scenario. So we get the Good Brothers taking on the War Dogs. So we get Carl Anderson and Doc Gallows of the Good Brothers taking on the War Dogs, being represented by David Finlay, the leader of Bullet Club War Dogs, and Drilla Malone. This was a fun match. This is the third time that we've seen them interact. The first one was at Northern Rising, where these two had a brawl, which ended in a no contest. Then at Resurgence, we had a 4-on-4 match. So the Good Brothers are probably on their final stretch in their careers, or who's to say? Maybe they'll keep going forever. I mean, we're going to talk about PCO in the main event. That man is nearly 50, 60 years old, and he's still killing it right now. So who knows what's to say? I'm interested to see where this goes. I don't know if the War Dogs will continue to be in MLP or the Good Brothers will be facing somebody else. But this was an okay match. This was relatively short, but then again, I kind of expect this because the last previous encounters have also kind of been on the shorter side, both at Northern Rising and at Resurgence, but I digress. So, Good Brothers end up winning. It seems they're going to become staples here in Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling too. So, this is going to be a fun one, and I'm interested to see what happens with all of this. So, from here, we move on to our next match. So this is the first of 3 big matches to kind of close out the show. This is for the MLW Women's Canadian Championship. We have our challenger in the ballsy badass Shotzi Blackheart taking on the champion in Giselle Shaw. So I'm going to start off with the positives because I think Shotzi and Giselle are very strong women's talents, and they were both great. And Shotzi's wrestling with kind of a broken arm right now in a cast, so there's limited stuff that they could have done together, which I was okay with. That's not what I had an issue with. Where I had an issue with is where we got to the end, and it's not even the Matt Cardona running in and hitting the radio silence on Shotzi, because we get that the ref counts for 2. Shotzi kicks out, but then they ring the bell, and we kind of had a stall because everybody was like, that wasn't the finish. What's happening? So the match kept going on for like an additional 30 seconds, which would allow Giselle to hit her finisher, and then she would be declared the winner. So I had to deduct points from that because that mistake, or whatever you want to call it, whoever was at fault for this one, it really kind of soured the ending of this match. And it kind of sucks because both of these women are great. And even the Matt Cardona run-in spot, I didn't mind because it sets up what's happening in GCW tomorrow at Boss of All Bosses. But the problem here is that because of this, it kind of, we had to call an audible, and we had to kind of just redo the ending to get the correct ending and get the correct winner and all of that. So it was very unfortunate for what had happened. This was a okay match. If I were to scale it on a scale of 5, I give it like 3 out of 5. It wasn't too bad, but the ending really soured it for me because everything before that was pretty solid, but nothing extraordinary. I still think Giselle Shaw versus Smiley Kylie Ray to crown the inaugural women's champ, which happened at Northern Rising, I think it's still my favorite women's match that we have seen in Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling so far. But Giselle is still your champion, and I'm very interested to see who is going to be her next opponent come the next 2 shows coming up here in the next few months. So, both of these women are great. Just unfortunately, the ending kind of soured it a little bit. In our semi-main event, though, we do get our Maple Leaf Pro. We get our MLP Canadian Championship match. This is the newly independent Ace Austin taking on the champion in the walking weapon, Josh Alexander. What I loved before we even talk about the match is we get this promo video from Ace Austin where he talks about the history with he has with Josh Alexander when both of them were in TNA. And he's wondering, had he chose option C, would he be on the same path as Josh to be able to win that TNA World Championship like he did? So he wants to get recompense and he wants to finally be able to say he beat Josh Alexander after all this time. And my goodness, this was also in my top 3 matches of the entire night. I thought this was really good. What I loved about this is Josh Alexander, I'm always going to love watching because he's one of my favorites and I think he's an awesome wrestler. But I feel like this was a good showing for Ace Austin now that he is a free agent. He is no longer with TNA. It's been a hot minute since we've seen him wrestle, but this was a really good coming out party, if you will, for Ace Austin. And this is a lot more hard hitting than I thought. These boys went to war with each other. There were bodies flying everywhere. There were bodies landing on the floor. Chops were had. People were flipping off top ropes. Like, this was an awesome match. I really, really enjoyed this one. And even though Ace Austin put in a lot of heart with this one, Josh Alexander ended up being the winner and is still your MLP Canadian champion. This was such a good match. I highly recommend everybody go out their way to watch this one, the 6-man scramble, and what's to come in our main event, not even gonna lie. But solid semi-main event. Josh Alexander continues to establish his reign as MLP Canadian champion. Very excited to see who he fights next. In the main event of Resurrection, we get a House of Pain match. This stems from PCO being attacked during the 20-man gauntlet at Northern Rising to crown the inaugural MLP Canadian champion. And this match is also for PCO's International Heavyweight Championship. So this is PCO taking on Dan Maff, being accompanied by Jimmy Jacobs. This was just a glorified street fight, monsters ball, whatever you want to call it. There were tables, there were cinder blocks, there were kendo sticks, chairs. They had everything. This match was crazy. The finisher of, and of course, we had Billy Gunn as our guest referee for some odd reason, but hey, you know what? I ain't mad about it. I love this match. This was just a fun slobber knocker between two beefy people just throwing each other and trying to hurt each other in crazy ways. And the finisher was nuts, watching PCO dive off of the 15-foot ladder through a set of tables and pinning Dan Maff in the crowd was amazing. PCO ends up winning and retaining his International Heavyweight Championship. He ends the show by getting on the mic and speaking a little bit of French because we are in his hometown of Montreal, Canada. And that is how Resurrection goes off of the air. Again, I don't have a lot to discuss. This was just a solid way for independent Canadian wrestling. And I really thoroughly enjoyed everything here that we saw. My biggest takeaway from the show, I'm going to start with the negatives. Unfortunately, the ending of the women's championship match kind of took me out of it a little bit. I felt like there could have been some better pacing as we got towards the middle of the card before we got into the big matches. But other than that, this was a really solid show. On the report card, I ended up giving it a B plus. I felt that all of this was a fantastic bout, and this was amazing, and I thoroughly enjoyed this match. So, before we go, I do want to make a couple of announcements. As I said at the beginning of this review, MLP it will be back with their next 2 shows that are happening that was announced during the show. Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling will be back on Saturday, July 26th with their next show, Downtown Showdown, that will be taking place in downtown Windsor. So we will not be covering that show because the same night that we would usually give for Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling reviews on Thursdays, we have a Progress Wrestling review scheduled for that same night. So I will still do the report card, but we will not be doing a review. But then Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling will be back with us in September as they will be having their Sacred Ground event coming from in the Six Nations territory. So, from my understanding, they're going to be having this event on some indigenous peoples and their grounds, which is going to be very interesting to see. And I'm interested to do that. And we will be doing a review for that in September. But that's going to be it for me here at Flannel Fighters. I do miss my co host, Will, but I know he's excited to cover more Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling as we continue to do so. And hey, I might actually have Will pop in to do progress with us at the end of the month, which I'm super excited about. But before we go, we got to get up on out of here. I do want to remind everyone what is coming up for the remainder of the week. So really quickly, we got stuff happening for the next 3 days before I head on vacation. So tomorrow evening, 7:30 p.m. Pacific, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, we have our TNA review. We are 2 weeks out from Slammiversary. So join me, Will, JT, and the other Will as well. The four of us talk about TNA as we ever inch closer to our Slammiversary watch along and subsequent review in 2 weeks. Then this weekend is jam packed, y'all, because Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern, I will be doing a short bite sized review for Ring of Honor Super Card of Honor show, which will be happening tomorrow evening, but I will be doing the review on Saturday morning. So this is going to be fun. We have some fun matches lined up. But then the big one is happening at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, Saturday afternoon as well, as we will be doing a live watch along for, if I can get it on the screen, there we go. We will be doing a live watch along for AEW's All in Texas. So myself, JVL, the Professor, we will be, and Mama Laguillo for part of it. We will be doing a live watch along for AEW All in Texas. This is gearing up to be a really great show, and I cannot wait. And then we wrap up the weekend Sunday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, as we do a live watch along for WWE's Evolution. WWE may not have cared about how they built the show and left the women out to the wolves, but I will be here, and so will the WWE crew, to give it their all. So that is going to be it for this upcoming week of shows. This is going to be a lot of fun. So thank you so much for tuning into Flannel Fighters. Flannel Fighters will be back in September to review Sacred Ground, and Will and I will probably be popping up in other places that we can think of. But until then, this has been Mikey El Jefe of BC Wrestle Pod. From all of us here at the BC Wrestle Pod family, remember, take care of yourself, love one another, stay Bi-Conic, and more importantly than anything, you always deserve to finish your story. We'll catch you tomorrow for the TNA review, as well as a fun, stacked weekend. But until then, adios. Take care of yourself. Take care of your neighbors in these trying times. And until tomorrow, we'll see you later. But until then, peace.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another Vibe Tribe production. What's gonna happen next time? Well, you're gonna have to tune in to find out. But until then, remember, take care of yourself, love one another, and as always, make sure that you keep the good times rolling. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time.